I remember when I first moved to Nashville, all of a sudden I was surrounded by musicians and people who were really doing it, and I felt intimidated, and I could see how good everyone was. And so the only thing I knew how to do was just be me and hope that was enough. Because I was like, if I can't be me in this space, then I need to do something else, because I'm terrible at faking it. I'm terrible at lying. I'm terrible at hiding whatever is going on in my heart from my face. And so when I remember that, it helps me to not feel as afraid of like, oh, but this was my big break, and oh, this is, because maybe something even better is coming.
Yeah.
Tomorrow or next week or next year.
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Vision Builders, a show about freedom, what it is, what it takes to build it, and what it takes to share it, and the age-old practice of leveraging other people's hindsight to bring clarity to our own developing stories. And with me today, I'm really, really excited to bring to you a friend of mine for really kind of a long time. I think 20 years we've been friends.
Gosh.
Maybe 21. That's weird. Anyway, Treva Blomquist, she's a musician, songwriter, mom, and friend, great friend. And, I'm really happy to be spending some time with her today and just to share a few things with all of you. So Treva, say hello to
Hello. Hi, it's so good to be with you, Chu.
Well,
so good.
Thank you. Obviously that's mutual. I was excited to have you on because when you say that you're going to have a show about freedom, that can take all sorts of different perspectives. It can, I think in the space on social media and in YouTube, there's a lot of people out there trying to project this image of what they think freedom ought to be, or success, I guess we'll use that word, success ought to be. And further trying to, whether it's fitness or, business or whatever, trying to let the world see them in the light of being successful. And what's interesting is when I think about like all of that and what that looks like and what it's kind of done and what it's created, meanwhile, there's this person who has really just been busy consistently over a not small period of time, loving on people and making music.
Yeah.
And it's really, from my perspective, not really much more complicated than that. And it's good music. It's not just like, I don't want to say anything disparaging about anybody who would dare greatly and pick up an instrument and a microphone and share their stories. So, but not taking anything away from anyone else. Treva's music is good. It's good to listen to. It's good to think about. It's good to consider. I actually you sent me an advanced copy of your music, and I took it with me to the gym, back when we could still do that. I don't know, like I was amazed by this work, which is fun. It's funny that after all this time, I'm still amazed. Got it. But
I'm glad
really,
that's the case, though. That's better than the alternative.
Better than the alternative. Well, it's better than me listening to it and going, that's okay. This other record was better. Like that's not what I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing, wow, as my friend grows and develops as a person, so too does her art. And so, so that's what one of the reasons that I was excited is you're kind of like a counter story to a lot of noise in a lot of ways. And one thing I've said to you so I feel fine just saying it right now, is I feel like people in general would be better off for knowing you. They would be
Oh,
better off for being in a relationship with you in one way or another. And so, I mean, honestly, this was me just going like, I don't know if there's any part that I have to play to connect people to Treva Blomquist. Like, I'm gonna do that. So, um, but first, I want I want to know a little bit about. I mean, I know because I've been there. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You were an athlete
yeah, it was.
and
It's hard to remember
musician.
that.
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, it's sports, the balls and the things.
Right, the running.
Yeah, and right, and I don't know what part that played, but when I met your parents, they had a pretty big impact on me. Just like
Oh,
I just thought, huh, maybe that's why. And so I would love for if you could like rewind the clock a little bit and help us understand why in an industry that's full of so many people saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at me." Have you just steadfastly been, but I want to give you something. I want to share, um,
yeah.
where does that come from?
I don't know. I hope that's something that God gave me, and as a result, I'm just passing it along. I hope. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm really interested. I love that you said that meeting my parents made you feel that, and I'd love to talk about that another time. More about that. What you saw and what you whatevered.
Yeah.
Because that's really sweet. Um, I think I already forgot what your question was. What was your question?
In a world where so many people in the arts are just fighting for attention, they're just
Mm,
fighting to project an image of this or that or whatever. You have been, in a way, just tracking along with this consistent, honest vulnerability before it was cool to be vulnerable, right?
mm,
Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of trendy now. And I wonder what about your early years, if it has anything to do with that, might have played a part in you not kind of falling into the vortex that is the music industry.
yeah. Um, I remember when I first moved to Nashville. All of a sudden, I was surrounded by musicians and people who were really doing it, and I think part of it for me was I felt intimidated, and I could see how good everyone was. And so and my only response to that, because I knew that I couldn't play guitar as well as so and so, or I didn't know, I hadn't learned how to write country hooks yet, and all of these things that I was like, I don't know how to do those things. And so the only thing I knew how to do was just be me and hope that was enough. Because I was like, if I can't be me in this space, then I need to do something else, because I'm terrible at faking it. I'm terrible at lying. I'm terrible at hiding whatever is going on in my heart from my face. Um, you know.
This is a true story. You are terrible at faking it,
I
and
am.
it's not a native language for you. Like, it's not a skin that you wear at all. I mean, I imagine just the ask, "Hey, Treva, we're going to need you to do like this," would be met with much consternation and confusion. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
kind of have you met me stuff would
So
probably come up.
so each time that I make a new album, I'm so excited, but that's actually the part that makes me the most scared, because then I have to figure out a plan to present it. And I'm much more like, I would just much rather be like, oh, here you go. But marketing, like, and PR and all of that. I'm so grateful there are people that do that and
Yes,
specialize in that, because
me
that's,
too.
I have no, I don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, and also too, because I think you're hitting on something, maybe intentionally, maybe not.
Oh.
Um, this idea, one of the things that I've learned when it comes to building a story or really creating any energy around moving in a particular direction, one of the things that often keeps us from moving is the what ifs. Like, what if I'm not good at that? What if they don't like me? What if I get to there and I don't have what I need to keep going? Then will it all have been wasted? Like, that song
Hmm.
that we
Yeah.
sing to ourselves can be crippling. And just by mentioning, I'm so glad that these people who have these skills and gifts that I don't have exist. I
Yeah.
think that is a huge way to not be trapped by the anxiety of what ifs, is to just recognize, like, I don't have to know it
Hmm.
all. I just have to
Hmm.
know who does,
Hmm.
and hopefully be a decent enough person that they want to be in your space, right? Like, they want to
For
cheer for you, they
sure.
want to help you. And um
Yeah. I mean, as an independent artist, I don't have a label supporting me. And so in a way, I get to just build my own team. And most a lot of PR agencies and marketing agencies, they're looking for clients. So it actually is a beautiful, I mean, and it takes us right back to sports and teams. Like, this
mhm.
is, I was a pitcher and I was good at pitching, but I was not good at first base and I was not good in the outfield. I wasn't, and that's okay. I
Yeah.
was good at pitching.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's an important distinction. And also too, like, I feel like when we learn to rely on other people's gifts, um, we bless them. Like you just said, like, they're looking in the same way you're looking for help. They're looking for people to help, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like sometimes we can get so stuck in the study, so to speak, of trying to figure out, well, how do I do this and how am I supposed to do that, that we don't realize, like, there's a whole industry around, like, literally every step of the process that you need to
Hmm.
take to go from here to there. And so I think that's huge. I think that's a big deal. And also too, I think the result is, when I think of integrity, when I think of what that means, one of the best pieces of advice, I was doing an event in LA once, and I honestly, I don't really remember who said this. It was on a panel of producers and directors and whatever, and I was the guy in the back running the sound in another world, when I used to do that sort of thing.
Yep.
But he was a producer of major studio pictures, and somebody asked him, what's the best piece of advice that you can give to anyone who's trying to grow in the entertainment industry? And it was really kind of shocking what he said, never lie. That was his best advice. Not this, go to this school, study this craft or what. He's like, never lie. He said the industry, and he's kind of paused, like a lot of people do. It's probably true of all industries. The industry is too small
Mm.
for it not to catch up with you. You will scorch the earth around you if you have a break of integrity, because people will learn pretty quickly, yeah, I can't count on that guy. So just make sure that whatever you do, you tell the truth. And I remember thinking about that and just thinking, that's interesting. Here's a guy who's at the top of the food chain in film, and I don't know, I think I was like 23 at the time, and just thinking about that, like, he had no reason to say that unless he actually believed that was the most important trait. And then
Hmm.
I look I look at where you're going and where you've been and what you're doing, and I go, you know, there may not be like the meteoric experience, but my goodness, you've been doing this for 20 years and you're still here. You're still doing it. and you're not cursing the industry. You're talking about how bad and awful it is. And,
Well,
you
I've
know,
been there. I've been there,
oh, of
but
course, you'd have to be delusional not to visit those
right.
moments.
It's
But
hard.
yeah. But yeah, like, you know, for me to introduce you to like our friend Cindy, and
Right.
then like just to know that you, of course, you guys are going to become fast friends because you're
Yeah.
both great people. You know, like, um, you know, that goes a long, long way. And I feel like, yeah, you know, I feel like I'm doing a lot of the talking here now on this subject, but just because I was excited to have this conversation with you because, you know, even still, like I'm not really in the entertainment industry anymore, but that's not to say that people don't still ring my phone from time to time to ask me something or to ask like, well, what do you think about this, that, or the other thing? And it's interesting that the people I think of first are legit the people that I like the most.
Yeah. I actually heard that about co-writing. Like some of the best advice for co-writing is just to be a good hang.
Hmm.
If you're somebody that people enjoy being around, then when they have a cancellation or when they look at their week and they're like, oh, good, I'm riding with Chew this week. They're
Hmm.
like, all right, it's going to be a good week, you know, and that affects everything. Like that you're doing business with people you like
Yeah.
and trust,
Yeah.
especially in a songwriting arena, because I think a ton of songwriting is about just telling the truth about stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and also believing that the people that you're telling the truth with actually are coming with their truth, you know, is
mm-hmm,
those are the things that we don't always pinpoint, but we know it when we see it, right? Like
mm-hmm,
when somebody's faking, it just everything just gets real clunky. It doesn't
mm-hmm.
work. And um well, one of the things, you know, one of the things that I'm very interested in is this idea of sharing freedom, right? And by the way, working definition of freedom for me is just the ability to create that which you love and blesses other people.
Mm, that's good.
Um, and so I think that no matter where we are, we can all choose to experience it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To experience freedom. We may not have a life necessarily that is arrived at a place where we can do that all the time, but to be in a place where the work of your hands, the thoughts that come out of your head, the creative energies that you expend can both bless other people and bring you joy. I think that's an important thing. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a great thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also fascinated with like what parts do we play in sharing that experience with others. And I know for me, at some critical moments in my life, my friendship with you was kind of like a life raft. You know what
Oh,
I mean? Um,
yeah.
and it's possible that now that I'm thinking about the timing of it, that might have been mutual
Mm-hmm.
at the particular time. But um, I was very much in danger of becoming a kind of going a little dark, so to speak. And then
Yeah.
here you come, full of life and reason to believe that there are good
Mm-hmm.
people out there. And I was I had a stay of execution, so to speak, right? And I think there's I don't know if there's something you could speak to, but like how do you as a person navigate just showing up in such a way that people know that they can they can have some moments of respite, of relief, because I think music has a great power to do that, but it comes
Yeah.
from somewhere. Like the person has to
Yeah.
bring that.
I mean, I would just say I don't know. That makes me so happy that that's how you felt and what you needed, and that you were met in that way, and that our friendship was like the means for that. But I always feel like it's something more. Like I always feel like that's not me. Like, because like I remember when I met you, I needed a friend. I needed a friend, and then it was just like, oh, and unlikely, but so perfect.
Yeah.
And I think those are more divine things than they are like, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was me doing something. I think that it's more divine of saying, hey, these two people can help each other right now. They can just give space for each other, and that's all
Hmm.
they need. And most of the time, that's all any of us need. I was talking with another friend just a couple hours ago, and we were talking about how we so many times we don't need someone to fix anything for us. We just need space to go ahead and be. And most of the time, once we get that, we already know what we should do.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
already know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was on with my dad. I recently recorded one of these, which was kind of like different than the rest of them, but just basically trying to share the origin story of how this show came. And one of the things that he said that I so appreciate was just, my dad actively wanted to just give me space to consider what I thought and how I felt about things. And he was consistent in that throughout my whole, like to my memory, I cannot recall. I can remember him telling me what to do from a like, this is in this house you must sort of way. But
Mm-hmm.
in general, when it came to projecting out my own future, my dad never, ever, ever told me what I ought to do. But he always gave me space to consider, what did I think and what did I feel? Who did I want to be? Like those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And he celebrated it even with
Mm-hmm.
me. And so, um, and I agree with you. I 100% agree. Like there is something bigger than us. There is a divine quality to human interaction that if we
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to it, we can have a much richer experience.
Yeah.
Um, the when I met you, we were in biology class, I think.
Yeah. I
Uh,
was trying to remember. I thought it was chemistry, but probably
it was
biology.
biology. It was
Yeah.
Dr. Zamora,
Look at
who
you.
was kind
Good
of
memory.
like, I don't know, he was an interesting character. And yeah, we had a biology class together, and I discovered that you were a musician somewhere along the way.
Yep.
And you discovered that I was studying music production,
Mm-hmm.
but then nothing kind of came of that for a long time. We just were friends.
Yep.
And then one day, I think a combination of you wanting to record some things and me needing to record some things for some of the classes that I was in
Mm-hmm.
led to us getting towards the end of a semester, going into the summer, of us just spending a bunch of time like recording music together, which then led
Yep.
to me, because then the summer, like in a suitcase campus like MTSU where we went to school, um, everybody
It's slim.
left for the
It was
summer.
slim pickings.
It
Yeah.
was slim pickings. So, well, meanwhile, I was trying to like, produce your EP. I ended up having to, I couldn't find another bass player, and I was like, I guess I'll just play. And then it came time to actually like go and play these songs, and then it was kind of like almost like a de facto sort of situation. It was like, I guess I'm the guy who's going to play bass on these songs when you go out.
Yep.
Uh, and that was there. That was something that happened for a season of time, and I think even that experience is more evidence of. I mean, I think a lot of times people, Gary Vee talks about this a lot. Like happiness is the point. I don't know if I fully agree with all of the way that is played out, but I certainly agree with the premise that if what you're doing is not bringing you closer to congruence with who you want to be, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Go the other
Mm-hmm.
way. And
Yeah.
and I remember that, you know, when a friendship is healthy, it starts to make you like you vibrate at a higher frequency. Like you start to believe things about yourself that are good. You start to hear what's true about you, and you start to
Mm-hmm.
ignore what's not. You start to develop a disdain for the lies that have been spoken over you, right? And like
Yeah.
all of that is completely possible when you have healthy friendships, because
Mm-hmm.
they refocus our attention so that we want to show up for our friends, right? We want to be there
Mm-hmm.
and available, and we start looking at our schedule and how those things are, and all these things happen. You're talking about like this divine quality of friendships. All these things kind of happen in the context of having good friends. And you know, I'm so grateful for that, because I was not smart enough, and I don't know that I am now yet. I was not smart enough at 20 or 19 years old to recognize like how good it would be for my soul to become friends with you. I know
Aw.
you know, I did. Yeah, it just kind of happened, right?
It
And
did.
um, in a sea of people in a town like Nashville, where everybody's trying to, not everybody, because obviously there are people who aren't in music in Nashville as well, but a lot of people in our field are kind of jockeying for position, trying to
Mm-hmm.
create their Rolodex of connections, and they're like very clinical about it.
Yeah.
Yet the people who are still here and who aren't bitter somehow figured out that like friendships is maybe the first point, and
Yeah.
then develop a skill set along the way.
Yeah. I mean, getting to know, I was just thinking that I actually didn't know a lot of the recording majors when I met you. And I didn't, and we met in biology, so neither of us knew that we were even both,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Um, and meeting you, then, I mean, this is also the beauty of friendship, because you advocated for me to your friends.
I
Like,
did.
I met your friends who were doing music, which was something I wanted to do more of. So many of your friends, just because of you, and you were willing to bring me along, which is just
Yeah.
even more beauty of just what friendship just does. You just kind of like,
Which is funny that you say that, because I don't really have a memory of that, which means that I wasn't like actively trying. There was no calculus there. Like I wasn't
yep,
trying to be like, okay, well, I'm going to help this Treva girl out. Like
yep,
I have no recollection of what you're describing, but obviously it happened, because I
it's
think I
just
can think of who these
natural.
people are that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny. So I know you said we could talk about this some other time, but I want to get to me meeting Earl.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because one, I don't want it to be a cliffhanger in the context of what we're talking about, but
Everyone is wondering.
um, it wasn't anything your dad said, except that I realized that he was very similar to my dad in that he was really funny, but in a quiet way. Like he didn't have to be the guy bringing the punchline, but he was clearly observing all the things going on. And you just look at him every once in a while, and he would just have a look on his face that I would be like, "Oh, okay." So there was certainly an easygoing sense of humor, but what I remember, the massive impression that I got from your dad was um like he made me feel like wherever he was home. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if there's a word for that, if there's like a scientific phrase for that. I don't know. I just know that I mean, your dad's not a big dude. I mean, maybe he is to some people, but like I'm 6'2", 2 something.
Right.
Yeah. So like, so it's not like his stature does it, but for some reason, just being around your dad just feels like, you know, hey everybody, and he's not a chatty guy. He's not the guy who's just saying a bunch of stuff. He just changes the temperature in the room and makes it feel like you can just relax and just be
That's
everything, you
really
know.
nice.
And the reason I bring that up is not just because I think your parents are great, but because I don't think that it's a stretch to say that. I mean, I could do the same thing about your mom too, by the way, but I'm just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but like, I don't think it's any coincidence that when you were faced with, oh my gosh, Nashville, look at how these people play and sing and present and perform, and they're so polished, and you didn't meet that with massive amount. I'm sure there was some because you're human, but like massive amounts of anxiety and fear. You kind of was like, well, I still have my guitar. I still have my voice. I'm gonna keep working at it, and it'll just be what it is. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't think there's any coincidence that that was your response.
Yeah.
Because of like, you know, when I say that I met your parents and I went, oh, that's why. That's not really accurate. It was more like I met your parents, and then years later I kind of connected the dots. Like, oh, of course she didn't develop a drug habit because you know, like
Yeah.
when you think you want to be something, and then you realize that there's like this massive bar,
Yeah.
and you start to think, because I mean that happened to me when I went to MTSU. I would have described myself as a musician, and then I stopped saying that out loud. Like I didn't want anyone to know that I was a musician. I
Yeah.
mean, at least of which bass. Like, I mean, this is the home of Reggie and Victor Wooten, right? Like,
Right.
I didn't want anybody to know I was a bass player. Like, I worked at Ivy Studios, and at the time, Melissa, I don't know what her last name is now, but I think Blankenship was the studio director, and we went to that event at the Recording Industry Association of America, I think, where you were working at the time. And
Yeah.
she was there because she was supposed to be there because she was, you know, an executive in the
Yeah.
recording space. And I was there just because you needed a +1. And then
And I was an intern.
and you were an intern, right? And then I see my boss like walk up, and she has this look on her face, like, kind of, what are you doing here? And then she turns it around right away and starts like talking to people about me. And she mentions, oh, I'm an up and coming producer and I'm a bass player. And I felt myself turning, like, I'm so glad that my skin is so dark, because I think everyone would have seen me turn green, because I was like, in that room, it's like the last place I wanted anybody to hear that I was a musician or that I was a producer, which probably should have been evidence for me to, you know then, like, that I would maybe do some other things, although my journey has taken me some pretty cool places. But neither here nor
Yes.
there. I remember that feeling of like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Could I play the bass? Yes. Could I play the piano and other instruments? Could I sing? Yeah. But like I was stuck on this like comparison cycle. And I was working in one of the top studios in Nashville, and I was seeing what these players were coming in and doing and fast every day. And I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, like how could I ever be that good
Yeah.
or that fast or that polished? There's not enough hours in the day at this point. I'm so far behind. I should have started this when I was 6. Like all of these things were kind of going through my head, yet you saw the same stuff I saw. And instead of going, oh no, I might be discovered as an imposter, you were like, but I'm gonna book a show at the Bluebird. I'm gonna book a show like I'm just gonna play, and if
Yeah.
people like it, they like it, and if they don't, I'm gonna be nice enough when I play that they wouldn't dare say a cross word. I'm pretty sure that did not cross your mind, but at least for the rest of us onlookers, it was pretty clear. What was that? What was the guy, the Mexican guy at the Bluebird who used to tell all those like ridiculous jokes between
Oh
sets?
gosh. I wish I could remember his name.
Chili's and taco and Chili's used to say all the time.
Oh, is it Lee Rascone?
Yeah, I think so. That rings a bell, but
Yes.
I think one of the things, well, the reason I brought that up is because that guy, it was like a national treasure for Nashville. Yet you would never guess if you saw him on the street that he had been a
No.
part of so many people's story. But
Yeah.
like you would keep just going out there and just doing it, just doing the work of honing a craft. And it wasn't like you never, this is another key. This is another thing that I think is important. You never waited to be there to do the thing. You just did the thing and kept doing the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I would venture to say, I mean, just from the sound of what you just produced, it's working for you. your
It,
your plan seems to be okay.
yeah. I don't know. I never know what's going to happen next, but it works just fine. And when it doesn't, then most of the time people forget about it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting because, like, for you to say that, that's another thing I feel like a lot of people do, not just artists, but a lot of people do, is they put all their sweat and toil into a project. And
Yeah.
then they also, just for fun, layer their identity on that work. So
Right.
instead of being a moment in time as the best representation of what they could do then,
Hmm.
they start looking at that as like a projection into the future of what they will always be. And
Yeah.
it's bad.
Right.
And so, meanwhile, you've got this other opportunity, this other way to look at it where you're like, no, I'm just going to do that and let it be what it is.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that process, I mean, I think the process of understanding that you do the best you can with what you have, but the confidence to let it go and let it just be has more to do with the certainty or the trust that you have in yourself that you're just going to keep working. You're just going to
Right.
keep producing. You're going to keep doing the thing. So
Yeah.
you're not going to have to be judged by that one thing. But most importantly, you don't have to judge yourself by that one thing.
Right. I mean, I feel for those artists and people, not just artists, but
Mm-hmm.
people who our identity is caught in in our job, because our identity can get caught up in anything. And the moment that it does, you're saying, you talk about a show about freedom, but the moment that our identity gets tied to our job or how much money we make, then the moment that those things are threatened, our whole everything that we are is threatened. And it doesn't need to be, because you're a loved, valuable human.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many, many people who love and value you. And it's not because of your money or your job or the last song you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful that along the way, I've had so many people say little things that were able to stick, like what you just said about a recording is just a picture of this song. Each artist, each person who's playing something in this given moment in time. Because I remember when I first started recording, I would listen to what we recorded, and then the next day, and I would be like, oh, I can do that better. And I would replay the same part over and over again until finally someone was like, listen, you're playing it exactly the same every time. And I don't know what you think you're going to do different.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a picture. You got to think about it like a snapshot. And this is a picture of today. And we're not going to touch it again tomorrow. Like, it's a picture and we're going to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. I once heard a friend of mine who's a director out in, well, anywhere, I guess, but he lives in California, and Tom Logan, and he he said, hey, listen, and the reason I mentioned him is because he's one of those prolific directors. Like, he's not like, I'm going to do one project every 2 years kind of director. He has directed an enormous amount of not just commercials, but films and TV shows or whatever. Just never stops. Like, he's that guy. Energizer Bunny of directing. And he said, Chu, a film is never done. It's just abandoned. Like, good. At some point, you just have to be okay with all things considered. This is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And move on to the next project. And then trust that as good as it gets for the time was good enough to get you the next project or the next or the next or the next. And what's interesting is history will show, because again, he's that prolific guy who just keeps working. History will show that perspective is actually pretty useful. Like, perfectionism is toxic. We're now, language like that is now coming out. People are going, oh, maybe this whole like get it just right thing, it wasn't a good idea, 80s. Like, maybe we shouldn't. But I feel like the opposite, like, you can't just say perfectionism is bad and not replace it with something that's workable, right? So I feel like this idea of giving yourself a timeline and giving yourself a list of activities and just committing to the work and just saying, whatever it is, it is. But it's also, when it's done, it's in the past and it has nothing to do with me anymore. And I feel like, again, one of the reasons I was so excited to have this conversation with you is because you haven't, what seems from the outside, an easy way about just kind of walking into those truths. Like, it seemed to have a lot of artists, actors, musicians, models, like, stuck, just completely stuck, because like, this is my big break mentality gets them all twisted in the mind about the actual craft, the work that they so-called love to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've had my share of heartbreak too. So, I mean, I get it. It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, anything you do is going to have that. I was thinking about that. And I think because I can get there too. And I believe in God. And Elizabeth Gilbert has a book called Big Magic that's so good. I highly recommend it. And she talks about God as just the source. And she talks about it like a relationship where every day, who knows what that day is going to bring. And so each new day, it's just another rung that you're going to grab onto. And who knows where it's going to take you, what kind of creativity is going to flow your way, what kind of ideas are going to come, because you haven't been there yet. And so when I remember that, it helps me to not feel as afraid of like, oh, but this was my big break. And, oh, this is, because maybe something even better is coming.
Yeah.
Tomorrow or next week or next year.
You're talking about like an abundance worldview versus a lack worldview.
Yeah.
And, I feel like every political season, those two worldviews get put on display, whether consciously or unconsciously. They're definitely active, right? And so on the one side, and I don't mean on the one side of the political spectrum at all, because that's not what this show is about. But what I find is that there's this belief that abundance is real, right? That if I continue to show up, the resources that I need to be who I'm called to be will also show up.
Mm-hmm.
And if I clarify the picture of who that is, I'll recognize them when they do. They won't catch me by
Mm-hmm.
surprise. I'll see them coming, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if you have an abundance worldview, you have the opportunity to eliminate a lot of the fears and anxieties that we have, because in general, you believe that if I keep showing up, I keep doing the work, I keep loving on people and myself for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
that the
Mm-hmm.
resources that I need to be who I need to be seed to the sower, not the person sitting on the bench thinking about sowing, but the one who's actually
Right.
sowing, right?
Right.
Will be my reality. On the other hand, you have this idea that if there's this opportunity, I'd better get it, because who knows when the next opportunity will come. And while there might be some empirical evidence, if you're thinking of it that way, to support that, the truth that I keep coming back to is, well, nuh-uh. Like, no, I mean, you don't have to live a life where you actually don't allow yourself to dream about a future of what could be, but instead
Mm-hmm.
you project today's hardship into the future and make it perpetual.
Yeah.
So that whenever this opportunity comes, this is the one limited train that gets me out of this place. And if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
on it, then my life will be over. It's what I used
Right.
to call, when I used to teach acting, like the 13-year-old girl syndrome.
Oh.
I would always say to my acting students back in the day, like, hey, 13-year-old girls have a superpower. It maybe not just 13-year-old, like it might extend to 18 even, but the capacity to take completely pedestrian realities and make them life or death. I would tell, they would raise the stakes to, my life is over. And so I would always say, like, channel your inner 13-year-old girl, because if you want to make the scene work, you're going to have to find where your enemies and allies in this moment live, and you're going to have to find a way to make it important enough to you to respond to these moments that you're creating naturally, right?
Right.
And so but I feel like we all have that capacity to catastrophize, right? To look at
Yeah.
where we are now and assume like I've been here for so long, and trains don't come by often, and this one break, I gotta make it work. I gotta put the square peg in the round hole,
Yeah.
because who knows if another train is coming. Meanwhile, you could be sitting at the station, so to speak, and realizing that you're having a beautiful conversation there, or that
Mm-hmm.
you noticed something in the sky that is, the wind blowing in the trees, that's making a tune to you that reminds you of something of your childhood. You can choose to experience joy anywhere and any time. And I feel like,
Yeah.
what you were just talking about, the whole, angst around whether or not the resources will be there, has a lot to do with whether or not you just believe that they will, like,
Right.
what sort of experience you have.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
oh man, it's we've been here on this call for like a while now.
Is it time? Did we do it?
It is. So there's a few things that I want to say. By the way, if you are enjoying this content, if it has resonated with you at all, by all means, hit the like button. That helps people find it. Also, if you really like the content, hit the subscribe button. That will just allow more people to find it. If you're listening to this on podcast, especially on Apple, leave a review, leave a comment, because that is how people find it. And again, some of you know already, I'm not monetizing this channel on YouTube. I'm not monetizing it on podcasts. There's a lot of reasons for that, but really the point is, I just want to make sure that people are getting connected to things that could help them realize that we have more in common than we don't. And so with that, how can people find you, Treva?
Yes. I'm on all the social networks. My
All of them.
website is trevamusic.com,
Okay.
Treva, music.com. And I'm on Instagram most of the time. Not most of the time, like I'm not on there all day, but that's the one that I like the most.
It's true.
And I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, yeah, kind of, but not much.
Yeah.
But I'm there if you. I would love for you to follow me there. Um, I
You've been
just
most
released a new album.
Yeah, you
Oh, go
did. So
ahead.
talk about the new album.
Yeah.
We've been mentioning it throughout. I would love for you to just take a moment to take us on
Yeah.
a journey on what is this album?
The album's called Snakes and Saints, and I released it July 31st, so it's only been out a few months. So I would love. It's available on Spotify and Apple Music. It's available on my store. I've got vinyl or CDs. I've
Ooh-wee.
got some T-shirts. So would love to just get it into your ears, and then I'd love it if it hits your heart in some way, because that's kind of why I make it.
It's kind of the point. It's
But
kind of why I do it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would love for you to save it and share it with your friends.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks it looks like this.
It looks, yes. Mhm. You might recognize the person on the cover.
That's
Yeah.
me.
Well, thank you so much. And you guys, you know, it, I'm not going to try to do a music review, but man, I think you'll find that this is an album that's full of things that's thought provoking, but also just nice to listen to. Sometimes, I can get a little too focused on what something is saying, but the truth is that wasn't even a possibility with this album, because it was full of songs that made me feel something first, so I didn't have to really think too much about what it was. I mean, obviously I went back and listened a few times, but
Yeah.
it's a great experience, and I hope you guys will go jump in on it. And this has been fun having this conversation with you,
Same.
Treva, and all of you out there who are listening or watching. I hope that you will go find Treva, and I hope that you will just go build a vision and build a life. Peace.